So, ESO is officially done with chapters, done with paid content drops, at least as we've known them, and I think this might be one of the most exciting changes for The Elder Scrolls Online in a long time. Let's talk about what's changing with ESO and seasons in 2026. Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Cal, and today we're going to be talking about that reveal livestream. So if you watched today's 2026 ESO reveal livestream, you probably walked away with dozens of questions. I know I sure did. There was some big news, both on the monetization front for ESO, as well as what's going to be included in quarterly updates moving forward. So what we heard today is that ZeniMax is moving ESO to a seasonal model. Last year we did have seasons of the Worm Cult, but this is a departure even from that. Seasons are going to be 3 months long, new content will be added directly to the base game, and some of the older DLC is also going to be folded in for free. I'm going to be honest, those are some major changes that I did not see coming to ESO in 2026. So let's take a minute to break down all the announcements and what I think this means for the future of ESO. So what are seasons really? At a basic level, seasons are just the replacement for chapters and DLC. It sounds like we're still going to have those quarterly patches that we're all used to, but the content is just going to be added directly to the base game, available for all players without the need to subscribe or purchase new DLCs to get access to that new content. And instead of buying a big expansion once a year, along with some optional add-ons throughout the rest of the year, everyone should have access to that new content, including any new quests, dungeons, zones, or game systems. Now, I personally love that no one is going to get left out moving forward, although I do wonder how well that new quarterly cosmetic pass will be received, but more on that in a minute. Now, when it comes to the content that is going to be within seasons, ZOS was clear that they don't want to have sort of a typical season. Some might focus on story, others on game systems, some on quality of life, and even others on experimentation. This is almost exactly what I've been hoping for as a replacement for the somewhat predictable annual formula that we've had for the last 8 years. I personally think that predictability started to work against the game, and we can see from what's been announced for Season 0 that this is a significant departure from that old content cadence and even last year's Seasons of the Worm Cult. First up, Season 0. So what we're getting first, they're calling Season 0, which immediately deviates from the new formula, so I guess you could say at least the first couple updates this year are still a bit of a transition. But there is really exciting stuff here, especially for anyone who is newer to ESO. As usual, the PTS is going live soon, so you'll be able to get your hands on some of these changes real soon, and Update 49 lands in March. With that update, the Thieves Guild, the Dark Brotherhood, and Orsinium are all becoming part of the base game for all players. This is something I think they probably should have done years ago, but I'm very excited to see it happening now. Even as a long-time ESO Plus subscriber, I've found it surprising that this sort of old core content was locked behind an additional purchase or subscription. And I think it's fair to question, is ESO even a test game without the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood? Still, this is not new content, and if you've already played through these zones and completed the storylines, it's less meaningful, but at the very least you'll still retain access even if you drop your sub in the future. But for newer players or players who have avoided the sub or just haven't gotten to these zones yet, I think this is pretty exciting news. 3 DLCs that you haven't purchased are now part of the content for you. Of course, there's more in Season 0 than that. So in addition, there's a slew of quality of life updates coming, including stuff like increasing the furnishing limits in some homes, finally, and they're adding new mounts to purchase with gold, which I know is kind of a small thing, but still very exciting for a lot of players out there, and also hopefully represents a meaningful shift towards moving some items out of the Crown Store, or at least having more options outside the Crown Store. But perhaps one of the bigger new features is the Night Market, a new type of zone that appears as though it might cater to flexible groups, a type of content that has been sorely missing from ESO, and that will make it great for those nights when you don't have exactly 4 players or exactly 12 players who want to play together, or guild events where you don't know how many people are going to show up. I definitely need more info here on exactly how this is all going to work, but it has piqued my interest. Season 0 will also include the aforementioned Dragon Knight class update, but it also looks like werewolf changes and two-handed skill line changes are on the way as well. I know these are all just existing skill lines, but it does sound like there will be some additional incentives added to re-engage with each to unlock new skill styles or perhaps other collectibles. Then it sounds like there are some big PvP changes coming as well, beyond Vengeance, including an entirely new progression system with all sorts of new PvP specific rewards to collect. I know I personally will probably be spending a lot of time in Cyrodiil and the Battlegrounds this year. But that's not all. The first iteration of Overland difficulty is also coming in Q1 with multiple multiple tiers. We're also going to see the introduction of Tamriel Tomes, which is sort of their take on a battle pass and will replace the daily login rewards, endeavor system, and the content pass. I do hope Tomes will be slightly more streamlined than those older systems and also offer better rewards. But it's important to note that while the new content will be accessible for everyone, and some of the Tamriel Tomes will also be accessible for everyone, if you do want to unlock every collectible a season has to offer, every cosmetic, you will have to pony up some cash for that season's tome. But still, I think the big takeaway is that from here on out, all new content, all new gameplay content will be free for anyone who owns ESO or plays through Game Pass. They did say that there will still be optional paid things, of course, but access to gameplay content itself is no longer paywall. And ultimately, I think that's an important shift for ESO. And it aligns with the model used by some of the biggest live service games in the world right now. But I'll be curious to see just how much of an impact this has on bringing new players to ESO. So why is ZOS making the change? Another thing I appreciated about the stream today is that ZeniMax shared a bit more about the reasoning behind these shifts. According to the developers, they felt that chapters had created barriers. Not just price barriers, but also confusion for players. And this is something that I've personally seen reflected on my Discord and on Reddit for years now. What content do you buy? What chapters do you need? What do I need to own to get access to the current meta? And what is optional? On top of that confusion, the chapter model also seemingly locked ZeniMax into an 18-month development cycle where everything needed to revolve around that one big chapter release. That allegedly made it difficult to react to player feedback or address some of the long-standing issues if they weren't going to help sell a DLC. They also shared that they believe this seasons model is going to give the development team room to breathe and to pivot when something isn't working or a new pain point rises up. So what could a future season look like? So we know what's in Season 0 and Season 1, but what could future seasons look like? The developers did share some what-if examples here. What if a piece of content became fully soloable? What if dragons showed up somewhere unexpected? What if we revisited places as the timeline evolves? What if a season focused more on updating existing content rather than adding new? And what's going on in Winterhold? Now, I'm not going to put too much stock in it, but I do think that some of these what-if examples were chosen strategically, maybe hinting at future seasons or ideas they have for future seasons. We'll have to wait and see. But as an MMO ages, I think it is extremely important to experiment in this way and revisit old content and storylines. Otherwise, parts of the game start showing their age in ways that can undermine the quality of newer releases, especially when it comes to visuals and the player user experience. Imagine a new player whose first experience might be in one of the older zones in the game, with less engaging content or less compelling rewards, versus dropping into the latest and greatest content. They also took time to confirm that this doesn't mean that they're abandoning new zones or stories just because they don't happen to be part of Season 0. We'll still unlock new parts of Tamriel. They just aren't ready to announce specifics yet. So while these first couple of seasons appear to be more focused on quality of life and new systems and maybe even revisiting certain stories, it sounds like we'll still see them filling in the rest of the map over the coming years. They did share that each season will have a theme, but that they could contain new PvE challenges, PvP additions, storylines, systems, zones, events, or more. Each season will also feature new rewards, some delivered via the new Tamriel Tome system, potentially added to the new Gold Coast Bazaar, or available through Golden Pursuits and in-game events, which will continue to exist. So no, ESO is not done telling stories or sending us to new places in Tamriel. Some practical changes that you should know about. Now, beyond the potential of new seasonal content, there's even more to make note of here. After Season 0, seasons will be 3 months long, but PC and console updates will now launch at the same time, which is probably necessary groundwork for crossplay, which I hadn't even considered at all. But I also think that moving forward, it'll be great that we can all dive into the new stuff together. And yes, they reconfirmed that crossplay is actively being worked on, although it sounds like it's not expected to launch in 2026. I still say the sooner the better, but I appreciate the transparency, and of course, I think it should remain a top priority for the long-term health of ESO. So what's my take? Overall, I'm really pleased with the announcement. I've been saying for a good while now that I don't necessarily need a new zone or a new storyline every year. If you were to dig through my back catalog of videos, you'll see that I've been asking for this sort of shift in focus for a long time now. I personally think that ESO needed this shakeup, especially for veteran players. The old model had become way too predictable and wasn't delivering enough content relevant to those veteran players to keep them engaged throughout the year. So things had gotten somewhat stale, and I just don't think the chapter model was serving to help grow the game any longer. So beyond being excited for some of the upcoming changes, I do think the seasonal approach should also give ZeniMax room to fix problems faster, experiment more, and hopefully involve us, the community, earlier and more often, which should ultimately result in more satisfying changes moving forward. Of course, whether this all works comes down to communication and execution, but philosophically, I like the direction. I have high hopes for the first couple of seasons, and of course, I'm anxious to get onto the PTS and test out all those Dragon Knight changes, but I do think I still need a couple updates to see how seasons actually feel once we're playing them. So, let me know what you think. Are you excited for what's coming in 2026? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I've got more coverage of the announcements coming soon, including a deep dive on the quality of life updates and the Gold Coast Bazaar, so be sure to subscribe for the next one. As always, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you again real soon. Bye for now, everyone.